Tycoon left his pregnant wife trembling. 3 years later, he saw her with triplets at an event. The rain fell gently on the old stone path that led to the hilltop manor, as if heaven itself was trying to soften what was never meant to be gentle. That day, the world seemed quieter, like it was holding its breath. She stood there, in a simple white dress that swayed in the cold wind, her hands nervously clutching a bouquet of pale lilies. Her name was Unji, and she had never seen a place so grand, nor felt so small. She had grown up far from this world of gold and glass, in a fishing village where the sea was both mother and enemy. Her father had died young, her mother worked endlessly, and Unji had learned early how to smile even when it hurt. And yet, here she was, about to marry a man from a world she didn't belong to. His name was Minho, the heir to the Kong financial empire, born with silver in his blood and steel in his eyes. When Unji met him at a charity clinic where she volunteered and he had come for a PR photo shoot, he had been different from what she imagined. He had smiled at her, genuinely, almost shyly, and had stayed long after the cameras left. They shared ramen from a roadside stand that night, and something happened that neither of them could explain. Connection. A pull. It wasn't long before he came back. Again. And again. Until those visits turned into long walks and long talks. She saw the boy hidden beneath the air, the soul behind the suit. And Minho? He saw the one person who looked at him like he wasn't a brand name or a power figure, just a man. "I don't understand what you're doing with me," she whispered one night, beneath the stars. Minho had reached for her hand and said softly, "You see me, not what they built around me. You make me feel free." It was enough for him to fight for her at first. Their courtship made headlines. Tycoon falls for orphan volunteer. The press loved it. Romantic, scandalous, unacceptable. His mother, Madame Kong, was furious. At their first meeting, Unji had bowed deeply and brought homemade rice cakes. Madame Kong didn't even look at them. "My son plays with toys," she had said icily. "He doesn't marry them." Unji had smiled anyway. She was used to being underestimated. Minho was firm. He proposed in front of the world, at a business gala, shocking his board, enraging his family. And so the wedding happened. Not in a grand cathedral, but in a modest hall she had chosen. With white lilies, her favorite. He wore a navy suit, elegant and composed. She wore the simplest of gowns, lace at the sleeves, her heart pounding wildly. As they exchanged vows, Unji's voice trembled with emotion. "I don't have anything to offer you," she said, "but my whole heart." Minho looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he wasn't performing. He was just a man in love. "You are everything I never knew I needed," he said, "and more than I deserve." The room was filled with hushed wonder. Some smiled, some scoffed. Cameras flashed, but Unji didn't see any of it. Her eyes were on him, and for a while it was good, quietly good. They lived in a modern apartment overlooking the city skyline. He would return late, but always bring something back. Pastries, flowers, tiny gifts he picked up between meetings. She filled their home with warmth, cooking the meals she remembered from her childhood, humming old folk songs in the kitchen. They laughed. They danced, barefoot on the balcony. He kissed her forehead every morning before leaving, whispering, "Wait for me." But outside their doors, the world had not accepted her. Not really. Not ever. At formal dinners, socialites ignored her. At company parties, board members whispered behind her back. Madame Kong made it her mission to remind everyone that Unji would never be one of them. "She wears thrifted shoes," someone sneered once. Unji had smiled and said, "They walk just fine." But even smiles wear thin. Minho began to change. It started with missed dinners, late calls, stress that made him silent at night. And when he spoke, his words grew sharper, colder. He wasn't cruel, not yet, but he was distant, distracted. The warmth began to fade. One evening, Unji waited with a homemade meal she had spent all day preparing. A special soup his grandmother used to love. He didn't come home. The next day, he apologized with flowers. "I'm just tired," he said. There's pressure. You wouldn't understand. She nodded, but her heart whispered fears. Then, one rainy morning, as the city blurred behind the windows, Unji held a small stick in her trembling hands. 2 red lines. A miracle. I'm pregnant, she said that night, eyes glistening. Minho froze, then forced a smile, polite, distant. That's fast, he said. Fast? She blinked, confused. We've been married almost a year. I just mean, things are complicated right now. The company's merging. There's a lot at stake. She tried to hold his hand. He didn't take it. That night, Unji lay awake beside him, tears soaking her pillow. He didn't even touch her belly. The next morning, he was gone before she woke up. The tale had begun with hope, with love that dared cross the walls of society. But shadows had begun to creep into their story. Shadows of class, pride, ambition. And as Unji placed a protective hand over her stomach, whispering to the life growing within her, she could feel something deeper than fear. A storm was coming, and she would face it alone. Shall I continue with topic 2 next? Você diz. Certo? Agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a história sem marcos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como su faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita moco. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo Ingalls, com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT diz. Of course. Here's the development of topic 2, continuing the story with deep emotional narration, as if you were the viewer. The tone remains cinematic, linear, and filled with feeling, like a dramatic K-drama unfolding before your eyes. The days began to pass like ghosts in their home, silent, weightless, but heavy in their presence. Unji still smiled, still cooked, still folded Minho's shirts with gentle fingers and love stitched into every seam. But love was no longer enough, because when she spoke, she received silence. When she reached out, he recoiled like her touch burned. And when she cried, it was alone, in a bathroom with the faucet running to hide the sound. And she never stopped loving him. She tried everything. One morning, she packed a lunch for him, his favorite. Seaweed rolls, dumplings, a little note tucked beside the rice. But when he came home late that night, the bag was untouched on the counter. He looked at it, then at her and muttered, "Please stop acting like this is a fantasy." Her smile wavered. "This is our life," she said gently. "It's real." He looked away. "I'm tired. So tired. Always tired. Tired of her? Tired of pretending?" Unji never said those words aloud, but they echoed in every room. She thought it might pass, a phase, a stress storm. She read about burnout, about executive pressure. She told herself he just needs time. He still loves me. He's just overwhelmed. But then, the calls began. Strange hours. He'd smile at his phone. A smile she hadn't seen in weeks, and step into another room to answer it. She asked once, softly, "Who was that?" "Business," he said. "Don't ask me things like that." The distance wasn't just emotional anymore. It was deliberate. And then came the dinners, corporate events she was no longer invited to. She used to be by his side, holding his arm, standing silently in rooms too bright and too cold. Now he left alone. "You won't feel comfortable," he'd say, not looking at her. But one night, curiosity betrayed her. She watched a live-streamed video of the gala. Minho stood center stage, suited in black, and beside him, a woman, elegant, tall, dressed in a silk gown, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Her name was Sumin, daughter of a major investor. Stunning, powerful, born into the world Unji never belonged to. She felt her heart sink as she watched them. The ease, the chemistry, the way he didn't flinch when she touched his arm. And for the first time, Unji let herself wonder if she had been a passing dream for him, something soft to escape to, until the real world called him back. She closed the laptop, And that night, the baby inside her kicked for the first time. She sat on the floor, hand over her belly, and cried so silently her body shook. He came home late. She didn't ask where he had been. He didn't offer an answer. Days later, Madame Kong appeared at their door unannounced. She walked in like she owned the air. "You look pale," she said coldly, looking at Eunji's belly. "I assume it's true?" Eunji nodded. "Yes, I'm pregnant." Madame Kang's face didn't soften. "This complicates everything." Eunji straightened her shoulders. "It's your grandchild." "No, it's a mistake," she replied flatly. "You were a mistake." Minho walked in mid-conversation. "Mother." "No. You listen," Madame Kong snapped. "This little village girl was amusing, maybe even sweet, but now you've got Sumin, and a merger hanging on a thread. You will not throw this empire away for a child born of weakness." Minho didn't respond. He looked at his mother, then at Eunji and said nothing. That silence would be the cruelest thing he ever gave her. Madame Kong turned to Eunji. "If you care for this child, you'll disappear. Spare it the shame of being unwanted." Eunji's face didn't crumble. Not this time. She stood, tears in her eyes, but her chin high. "I may not have wealth or power," she whispered, "but I have love, and if that's weakness to you, I'll be weak with pride." Madame Kong scoffed. "You won't survive." But Eunji wasn't listening anymore. She looked at Minho, and he still said nothing. Later that night, as thunder cracked the sky and wind howled at the windows, Eunji waited. She waited for an apology, a whisper, a touch, anything. He sat in the living room drinking in the dark. "I don't want this anymore," he finally said. Her heart shattered. "Don't want what?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "This," he said. "Us, this life, this mistake." She moved back like he had struck her. "The baby? I'll provide support," he muttered. "But I can't do this. I can't be that man." The rain against the window was deafening. "You said I made you feel free," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "That was before I remembered who I was supposed to be." That was the moment she knew. The man she loved was gone. Not dead, not changed, just chosen. He had chosen power, image, control, and left her in the ruins of a love that once felt like home. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She packed in silence. A small bag, her few belongings, a photo of them from when they were happy. He didn't try to stop her. At the door, she turned one last time. "I loved you more than you'll ever understand." And then she left, down the steps, into the night, into the storm, pregnant, trembling, alone. The world watched the Tycoon rise higher, smile wider. But somewhere far from the cameras and applause, a woman walked away carrying not just life inside her, but the memory of a love she had never deserved to lose. The taxi driver didn't ask questions. He saw the tears she tried to hide, the bag clutched tightly to her chest, the faint roundness beneath her dress. He simply nodded when she said, "To the station, please." And when she got out, he handed her a small envelope without a word. Inside was money, too much for the short ride. She tried to refuse. "I can't. Sometimes, people just need a way out," he said gently. The train ride was long. Her head rested against the window as cities blurred into countryside. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. The weight of grief and betrayal pressed into her ribs, made it hard to breathe. Her fingers stayed laced over her belly, as if her touch alone could shield the life growing inside her. She arrived in the fishing village just before sunrise. The sea smelled the same. The air had that salty wetness she remembered from childhood, sharp, raw, real. She hadn't been back in years. There was no family left, just memories. An old neighbor recognized her and offered a room in the back of her modest guest house. "You look like you need a place to cry," she said, holding Eunji's face with kind, wrinkled hands. And Eunji cried. For hours. For days. But she didn't break. She got up every morning and swept the porch, helped in the kitchen, volunteered at the clinic. And each night, she sang softly to the baby, lullabies her mother used to sing, soft, haunting songs that smelled of sea and sadness. Then, one morning, it happened. She felt the pain shoot through her body like lightning. She collapsed beside the bed, clutching her belly. The old neighbor rushed in, panic in her eyes. "We have to get you to the hospital. Now." It was storming outside. Thunder rolled over the rooftops like war drums. But the car pushed through the rain, headlights barely piercing the darkness. She was barely conscious by the time they reached the emergency entrance. Nurses lifted her onto a stretcher. Her vision blurred. I'm not ready," she whispered, tears mingling with sweat. "Please, don't let them be alone." And then, everything went black. She woke to a soft beeping. White ceiling, for in her arm, a nurse at her side. "You're awake," the woman smiled gently. "And so are your babies." Unji blinked. "Babies?" The nurse laughed lightly. "3 of them, triplets." Her heart stopped. 3. You have 3 beautiful, healthy babies." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did both. They brought her to them one by one. Tiny, warm, perfect. 2 boys, 1 girl, each with his eyes, Minho's eyes, and it shattered her all over again. She named them herself. Jaehyun, bright and virtuous. Suwon, to defend and protect. Haerin, grace like the sea. And in that small hospital room, in a town the world forgot, she made them a promise. "I may have nothing," she whispered, cradling them all in her arms. "But I will love you with everything I am. I will protect you. I will raise you in truth, not in shame. And I will never let anyone make you feel like you are not enough." She was discharged 3 days later. There was no nursery, no designer crib, just a small room, a second-hand crib, and a heart big enough for all of them. The village embraced her. The women brought clothes. The fishermen left baskets of fish. Strangers became family. And Unji learned how to survive. At night, she watched the sea and whispered prayers into the waves. She didn't say his name. Not anymore. But sometimes, when the children laughed, when they made that face he used to make when he was being mischievous, her chest would tighten. And in the quietest hours, when all 3 were asleep beside her, she would wonder, did he ever think about them? Did he know what he gave up? Did he regret it? But those thoughts didn't linger long, because every day was a fight. Diapers, fevers, exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. But also laughter, tiny hands gripping hers. First steps, first words. "Amma," they called her. "Amma." And she lived for that. 3 years passed. Her face grew thinner, her hands stronger. Her eyes carried the weight of a lifetime. But her smile was still soft, still full of light. She began working at the local school, teaching music. She saved every penny. She mended their clothes with thread and patience. And when she sang again, it wasn't for him anymore. It was for them. Then one day a letter arrived. From the city. A charity she'd volunteered for back when she was newly married, before everything collapsed, had nominated her for an award. A teacher had sent in her story. She almost threw the letter away. But her children saw it first. Bright colors, a golden seal, their mother's name in print. "Amma, what is this?" Jaehyun asked, climbing into her lap. Suwon pointed to the picture. "It says you're a hero." "I'm not a hero," she laughed gently. But Haerin, with her quiet wisdom, looked up and said, "You're our hero." That night, Unji sat beside the window, the letter in her lap, the stars outside cold and distant. Did she dare return? Did she dare walk into the city that once spit her out and look them in the eye? Not as a broken woman, but as someone who had rebuilt herself? She hadn't seen Minho since that night. She didn't even know where he was now. But something deep inside whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was time. Not for him, for her. And so, with trembling hands and a heart stitched back together by tiny fingers and lullabies, she filled out the RSVP form. She would attend. And she would not go. The triplets sat beside her in their best clothes. Neat, excited, oblivious to the storm quietly stirring in her chest. Will there be cake? Suwon asked, pressing his face to the window. Jaehyun giggled. Maybe there'll be a stage. You can sing again. Eunji smiled, brushing a hand through Haerin's soft hair as the little girl leaned against her shoulder. Cake, maybe? She whispered. Singing, we'll see. But her eyes never left the skyline. The event was held at a grand cultural center in the heart of Seoul. When she stepped out of the taxi, cameras flashed. Elegant guests floated past in gowns and tuxedos, each one seemingly carved out of perfection. She took a deep breath. You look pretty, Haerin said, squeezing her hand. Eunji looked down at her simple dress. Pale blue, soft cotton. Not expensive, but clean and lovely. She wore no jewelry, just the locket with their baby photos inside. She knelt in front of them. Stay close to me, all right? If anyone asks who you are, you tell them proudly. I'm Eunji's child. Yes, they chimed together. As they entered the hall, she was not prepared for how quickly the air changed. Lights sparkled overhead like stars frozen in chandeliers. The floors gleamed beneath their feet. Waiters moved like shadows carrying silver trays. People turned, looked, not because they knew her, not yet, but because of her quiet presence. A woman walking alone into a world she had once been cast out from, with 3 small children clinging to her hands. Some faces showed curiosity, others vague disdain, but she held her head high. They guided her to her seat 3rd row center. A spotlight hit the stage and music began to play. Speeches followed. Names were called. She clapped when others clapped, smiled when the triplets gasped in wonder. But then, the room shifted. A man walked onto the stage. Her breath caught. It was him, Minho. He stood tall in a perfectly tailored black suit, just like the last time she'd seen him, only now older, his face sharper, his expression colder. He spoke to the crowd with practiced ease, his voice rich, controlled. To give, he said, is not just a duty, it's a privilege. And tonight, I am honored to contribute to a cause that reminds us of what truly matters. She hadn't moved, couldn't. Her fingers gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles whitened. Suwon looked up at her. Why are you shaking? Jaehyun followed his gaze. That man, he looks like me. She closed her eyes. The air felt thinner. On the stage, Minho stepped back as applause erupted. He walked down toward the front, flanked by 2 executives, smiling, shaking hands. Then it happened. He looked up and saw her. His steps faltered. Their eyes locked. For a second, just a second, the world stopped. She saw it all in his face. Recognition, shock, confusion, and something deeper, something raw. He froze. His mouth opened slightly, as if to speak. But then he looked down, at the children, 3 little faces, staring up at him with wide, curious eyes. His eyes, he paled. His lips moved. A breath. A name? But she stood. Her heart pounded in her throat. She didn't want a scene. She couldn't fall apart. Not here. Not now. She turned to the children. Let's go, she whispered, her voice trembling. But, no. Now. They followed her obediently, though confused. She reached the side corridor, heart racing, breath uneven. She leaned against the wall, breathed. She hadn't planned for this, hadn't imagined facing him in such a sudden, jarring way. Then she heard it. Eunji. She turned. He stood there, just steps away, eyes filled with disbelief. Is it really you? She didn't answer. His eyes dropped again to the children now peeking from behind her skirt. He took a shaky step forward. Are they? She raised her hand, stopping him. You don't get to ask that. He flinched. I thought you died? She cut him off. Disappeared? You left me no choice. I was alone, pregnant. And you, her voice cracked. You said you didn't want us. The weight of her words hit him like glass shattering in his chest. I didn't mean. He looked desperate. I didn't know. Triplets? She laughed bitterly. No. You didn't know. You didn't care enough to find out. He tried to speak again, but she shook her head. They don't know you, she said softly. You're just a stranger in a suit to them. Don't you dare confuse them. The triplets looked up, sensing the tension but not the history. Minho's face crumpled. I made a mistake, he whispered. I made the worst mistake of my life. Eunji didn't deny it. He looked at them again, tears rising in his eyes now. I see them. They're beautiful. They're mine, she said gently. And they're enough. A moment passed, and then the door opened. Coordinator peeked through, searching. Ms. Kong, it's your turn. You're being honored next. He looked at her, stunned. You? Yes, she said, for surviving. And without another word, she walked past him, toward the stage, the lights waiting, the children following, and the man she once loved left standing in a corridor filled with echoes of everything he had lost. Shall I continue? As she stepped up, the hall fell quiet. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Executives, celebrities, donors, media. The same polished crowd that once whispered behind fans and champagne glasses. She's not one of us. But tonight, they didn't know who she was. Not yet. She stood tall, her hands gently resting on the shoulders of her 3 children, who stood just in front of her. One gripping her dress, another peering curiously at the crowd, the third sucking quietly on her fingers, a little nervous, but brave. A host leaned into the microphone. Tonight, we honor a woman whose quiet acts of love became a lighthouse for so many. A teacher, a volunteer, a mother of 3, Ms. Kong Eunji. Applause erupted, and from behind the side curtain, Minho watched with his heart breaking open. He had never seen her like this. Not on magazine covers, not on their wedding day, not even in his memories. This woman standing on the stage was glowing, unshakable, powerful in her quiet grace. She accepted the bouquet with a slight nod, then approached the podium. The microphone crackled for a moment. The hall grew still again. 3 years ago, she began, voice steady, I left this city with nothing but a suitcase and a heartbeat inside me. She looked down at the children. I was terrified, lost, forgotten. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't break. I had no home, no support, no name anyone would protect. But I had them, and they were enough. Murmurs moved across the room like a slow wave. Some guests straightened, others whispered. People say strength comes from power, she continued. But I've learned it comes from surviving without it. From facing doors slammed in your face and still choosing to knock. Not for yourself, but for the little ones behind you. Minho leaned forward in the shadows, his throat tight. The world didn't want me to raise 3 children alone. Said I was foolish, weak, that I should give up or go back. But love doesn't retreat. She paused, tears shining in her eyes. It builds. A quiet gasp came from somewhere in the audience. A few people began to realize, to connect the dots. Her last name, the resemblance, the silence in Minho's section. I accept this award not because I'm special, she said, but because every single mother who has ever been left behind deserves to be seen. Because children born without gold around their cribs still shine. She looked down again. And because I promised them we would be okay. Applause burst out again, this time louder, longer, real. She bowed. And as she walked off stage with her children, head high, heart steady, she passed him. He was waiting just behind the curtain, frozen, ashen. She didn't look at him, not once, but the children did. Jaehyun paused, blinking up at the tall man with the same jawline. Suwon tilted his head curiously. And Haerin? She waved. Hi, mister. Minho smiled weakly. Hi. Eunji placed her hand on their backs. Come on, little ones. But before they could walk away, Minho reached forward, voice raw. Please wait. She stopped, slowly turned to him. He stepped closer. Every movement seemed heavy with regret. I need to say something. She looked him straight in the eyes. Say it, she replied softly. He glanced at the children again, and emotion swelled in his throat. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know what I was giving up. I thought I was choosing power. But all I did was lose the only thing that ever truly mattered." Her expression didn't soften. "Not yet. You didn't just lose me," she said. "You abandoned them before they were even born. You left them with no name, no protection, no father's hands to hold them." "I know," he breathed. "I know I don't deserve anything, not even forgiveness. But let me try. Let me be something. To them. To you." There was a long pause. The sounds of the event faded behind them. The lights, the chatter. It all blurred into silence as her gaze locked onto his. "You want to be something to them?" she asked, her voice breaking, full of disbelief. "Where were you when I screamed in labor with no one's hand to hold? Where were you when I rationed rice to feed 3 mouths? When they cried at night, asking why they didn't have a daddy like the other kids?" "I was a coward," he said. "I thought I was doing the right thing for my legacy, but I destroyed it instead." The children looked between them. The tension, the grief. They didn't understand the past, but they felt it, deep in their bones. "Amma," Suwon whispered, tugging at her sleeve. "Why is that man sad?" Unji knelt down and cupped his face gently. "Because he remembers now," she said softly. "But some memories come too late." Minho's lips trembled. "I've watched videos of them every night since I found out," he said desperately. "I can't erase what I did, but I want to do better. If not for you, then for them." The silence stretched between them like a wound. Then Unji rose to her feet. "I didn't come here for you," she said. "I came because I finally stopped hiding. Not because I wanted you to see what you lost, but because I wanted my children to see what I've become." He looked down, nodded. Unji held her umbrella in one hand, the other guiding the triplets toward the car the event organizers had arranged for them. She had done what she came to do. She had stood on that stage, spoken her truth, and walked away with her head unbowed. But the encounter with Minho, it left something trembling inside her. Not pain, not love, something more complicated, something quiet. She tightened her grip on the children's hands. "Are we going back to our town now?" Jaehyun asked. "Soon," she replied, opening the car door. Suwon turned from the window once they were inside. "Amma, is that man going to follow us?" "No," she said softly. "He has his own road." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure. And she was right. Far across the city, in a penthouse wrapped in cold glass and silence, Minho stood alone in the dark, drink untouched in his hand. He hadn't gone to the after-party. He hadn't spoken to the press. He had left quietly, too shaken to even respond when his assistant asked if he needed anything. He stared at the large painting on the wall, a gift from his mother, a symbol of legacy and tradition. But tonight it looked empty, just paint. He took out his phone and played the video again, the one someone had already uploaded from the event. Unji on the stage, her voice steady, her eyes shining, her children clinging to her like stars orbiting a moon. He watched it again, and again, and then he saw it, a moment barely there. One of the boys smiled, just slightly, in the exact same crooked way he had as a child. That tiny flicker, it broke him. He sat down, buried his face in his hands and cried. Not for her, for all the moments he had missed. The next day, the tabloids exploded. Tycoon's ex-wife returns, with triplets. Kang Minho confronts the past at charity gala. Who are the children by her side? The press went wild. Rumors flew like knives. Shareholders demanded answers. His mother called 16 times. He didn't answer any of them, because there was one question only he could ask, and he knew exactly where to find it. It was nearly evening when the car pulled up outside a familiar building. Not her home. She'd never told him where she lived now, but the school where she had once volunteered, and where the event organizers had mentioned she taught music now. He sat in the back seat, watching through the rain-specked window as children filed out in groups. Some held art projects. Some chased each other. And then he saw them. 3 children running into her arms. He got out of the car. Slowly, carefully. He didn't approach right away. He watched. She knelt to zip Suwon's jacket, gently brushing hair from Haerin's face. Jaehyun tugged at her skirt, pointing toward the candy stall nearby. They were so full of life, so safe. He took a step forward. The gravel crunched beneath his shoes. She turned. Their eyes met again. Not under chandeliers or spotlights, but in the gray glow of a cloudy afternoon, beside a chain-link fence and a cracked sidewalk. Real. Honest. Raw. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice low. The children turned too. Minho looked down at them and then back at her. "I needed to see it," he said. "See them. See you. Not through cameras. Not in a hall. But like this." Her expression didn't change. "I told you not to confuse them. I'm not here to claim anything," he said. "Just to understand what I lost." She hesitated. The children looked back and forth. Hairin whispered, "Amma, is he bad?" Eunji gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "He's someone from a long time ago." "I deserve that," Minho said. "You deserve a lot more than that," she replied. Silence stretched between them, heavy like rain-soaked clouds. He looked back at the children again. "Do they know my name?" "No," she answered. "And they don't need to, because names didn't hold them when they cried. Names didn't teach them to walk or stay up with them through fever." He nodded. Slowly. "You're right," he said. "You always were." And then, for the first time in his life, Minho did something no one expected. He bowed. Deeply. Fully. With humility in every bone of his body. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not for what I missed, but for what I made you carry alone." Her breath hitched. She hadn't expected that. Not from him. One of the boys stepped forward, staring at him. "You look like me," Jaehyun said. Minho swallowed hard. "I know. Why?" Minho glanced at Eunji, then knelt down to the boy's level. "Because you're a part of me, and I was too foolish to understand how lucky I was." Jaehyun tilted his head, thoughtful. "Do you like robots?" A faint smile flickered on Minho's face. "Yes, I used to build them when I was little." The boy lit up. "Me too." Eunji placed her hand over her heart, trying to breathe through the sudden storm of emotion swelling in her chest. This wasn't what she had planned. She had told herself she was done, that she had no room left for him in her story. But watching him kneel before their child, not as a CEO, not as a tycoon, but as a man stripped of everything but remorse, it shook something loose in her. Still, she didn't soften. "Not yet. I'm not letting you back into their lives just because you feel sorry now," she said. "I understand. You don't get to disappear and reappear like nothing happened. I know." He rose to his feet, looked her in the eyes. "But if there's any part of you that would let me start over, not with you but with them, I will wait. I will prove it. Every single day." The sky began to drizzle. The children pulled their jackets closer. Eunji looked at him, and for the first time, didn't look away immediately. "I don't forgive you," she said. His shoulders tensed, but he nodded. "I don't expect you to. But maybe," she added softer now, "they deserve to choose if they want to know you." He looked at her, eyes filled with something too deep for words. "Thank you." And then she turned, took the children's hands again, and walked away. But this time, she didn't feel like she was walking alone. Not anymore. Eunji stood in the kitchen, slicing vegetables with slow, methodical movements. Steam rose from the pot on the stove. The aroma of broth filled the air, warm and familiar. Yet her hands were trembling. The children were in the next room, drawing with colored pencils under the soft glow of a lamp. Their laughter rose now and then, light, carefree, oblivious. But inside her, something was unraveling. A thread tugged loose after years of being knotted tight. She looked down at the cutting board. Her fingers hesitated. How strange it was. How quickly old wounds could sting again when the man who caused them showed up looking like regret itself. Minho had bowed to their son. He had admitted fault. He had said sorry. But could that ever be enough? The door creaked open behind her. "Amma!" It was Rin, her daughter's tiny voice like a feather in the air. "Yes, sweetie? Why did that man know Suwon's favorite candy?" Eunji turned around, drying her hands slowly on a towel. "Maybe he guessed. He said he knew it because he likes the same one," Rin murmured. "And he said he built robots too, like Jae-hyun." She sat down on a low stool, looking at her daughter's curious eyes. "Do you want to know who he is?" Eunji asked gently. The little girl tilted her head. "He made you sad. I felt it." Eunji smiled weakly. Children saw more than adults ever realized. "Yes," she said softly. "He did. A long time ago. Will he come back?" Eunji didn't answer right away. She looked out the window toward the ocean. The sky was a soft lavender now, the sun dipping slowly beneath the edge of the world. "I think maybe he wants to," she said at last. Rin nodded once, then leaned her head against her mother's knee. "I don't want you to cry anymore." "I'll try not to," Eunji whispered, brushing her fingers through her daughter's hair. That night, after the children were asleep, she sat alone on the floor with a single candle lit beside her. The photo of their wedding day lay unfolded in her lap. She hadn't looked at it in years. There they were, younger, untouched by betrayal. He was smiling down at her. And she looked like someone who still believed love could conquer anything. A soft knock at the door startled her. She froze. Another knock. Hesitant. She rose slowly, heart thudding. When she opened it, the wind rushed in first. Then the sight of him. Minho stood there, not in a suit, not with bodyguards or fancy cars. Just him. A simple coat. A nervous expression. His eyes filled with something like desperation. Or maybe hope. "I'm sorry to come this late," he said, voice low. She didn't move. "I didn't know where else to go," he added. "And I couldn't sleep. I haven't slept in days." "Minho," she said quietly, unsure what came next. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said quickly. "I'm not here to force anything. I wanted to bring this." He held out a folder. She took it slowly. Inside were dozens of papers. Legal documents. "What is this?" "Proof I've transferred shares into their names. A trust. For their education. Their future." She stared at him. "You don't even know them." "I want to, but I don't expect you to let me yet. I need them to be okay. Even if they never call me Appa." The words struck her heart like thunder in a clear sky. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm not impressed by money anymore," she said. "You know that." "I know," he nodded. "But this isn't to impress you. It's the only thing I can do right now, because I can't erase the nights you stayed up alone. I can't go back and walk beside you when you gave birth. I can't be the one who held them when they had nightmares." Tears filled his eyes. "But maybe I can be the one who helps them reach something better. Maybe I can still protect them in some way." She wanted to scream at him, to say where was this man before, to ask why now, but the questions wouldn't come. Her throat was too full of silence. She nodded once. "Okay," she said softly. "You can set up the trust." He let out a breath like it was the first time he'd breathed in weeks. "And I won't hide them from you, not forever. But I won't rush it either." He looked at her, really looked. "You have every right to take your time." She hesitated, then added, "There's a parent-teacher picnic next week, at the school. They don't know what a father's hug feels like. I won't introduce you as anything, but if you want to be there, you can." He blinked, stunned. "I'll be there. I'm not doing this for you," she warned. "I'm doing this for them." "I know," he said, "but still, thank you." The wind picked up again, brushing between them like a memory. She didn't invite him inside. She couldn't. Not yet. But as she closed the door behind her, her hands lingered for a moment longer than she meant them to. And on the other side, Minho stood in the cold, staring up at the dark sky, whispering, "I will earn my place, even if it takes the rest of my life." The triplets were gathered around the low table, scribbling on coloring books, occasionally giggling or nudging each other. Life had become a rhythm, not perfect, but peaceful. A life built from pieces, held together by quiet strength. And yet, the knock from the night before still echoed in her chest. She hadn't told them. Not yet. She didn't know how. She watched their little faces. The way Suwon furrowed his brows like Min-ho when he concentrated. The way Jae-hyun tilted his head before asking questions. The quiet way Hae-rin observed everyone before speaking. He was in them, not just in blood, but in gestures, in fragments of expressions. She turned back to the stove, blinking fast. She couldn't fall apart today. They had a walk planned. The sea was calling. Later, as they strolled along the path near the cliffs, wind brushing their hair, Hae-rin skipped beside her. "Amma?" she said. "Yes, love. That man. The one who came yesterday." She hesitated. "He didn't look mean." "No, he didn't," Eunji replied softly. "Will we see him again?" Eunji paused, looking out toward the endless blue. "You might," she said, careful, calm. Jae-hyun tugged at her sleeve. "Is he someone you loved?" The question was a spear. Small, direct, childlike, but it struck with full force. "I did," she answered after a beat. "A long time ago, when I thought love meant never letting go." Suwon asked next. "Did he love you too?" She bent down, gathering them close, brushing the wind from their cheeks. "He did, maybe, but sometimes people love in broken ways. Ways that leave scars. They didn't fully understand, but they nodded anyway. And then suddenly Jae-hyun pointed. "Look, that's him." At the edge of the path, a short distance ahead, stood Min-ho. Not in his usual tailored form. Today he wore jeans, a light jacket, and sneakers that had clearly never touched sand before. He didn't wave. He stood still, uncertain. Eunji's heart stopped for a second. The children looked up at her. "Should we say hi?" Hae-rin whispered. She hesitated, then finally nodded. "If you want to." The children darted forward, running toward him. Min-ho's eyes widened, surprised, maybe even afraid. But when Suwon hugged his leg without warning, he let out a breath that was half a sob. "You came back," Jae-hyun said proudly, arms crossed. Min-ho knelt, barely holding himself together. "I said I would." He looked up at Eunji as she approached, slowly, guarded. "You didn't have to show up like this," she said, voice neutral. "I didn't want to wait a week," he admitted. "I wanted to see what their world looks like." She folded her arms, watching him. "You're not part of it." "Not yet," he said gently. "But I'm hoping someday, maybe I could be." She didn't respond. The children began collecting seashells nearby, giving them space without understanding why. Min-ho stared out at the waves. "I thought I knew what happiness was," he said quietly. "The business, the power, the control. But it was hollow. It always was." Eunji's voice was soft but firm. "And you figured that out after you watched me stand on a stage?" "No," he said, looking at her. "I figured it out the moment I saw my son smile like I used to." Her breath caught in her throat. He continued. "I went home that night and looked at old photos. I saw my eyes in his, my hesitation in Hae-rin, my curiosity in Jae-hyun. And I realized, they're not strangers. They're mine. And I lost years I'll never get back." She swallowed hard. Her throat burned. "You're right," she said. "You did." He nodded. "I won't ask you to forgive me. Not now. Maybe not ever. But if you let me come here sometimes, even just to walk with them, to listen, I will be here. Even if it hurts. Even if it's awkward. Even if they call me Mr. Forever." She stared at him, torn between the past and the present. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her scarf. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you even know how to be a father?" He smiled, but it was sad. "No, I don't. But I know I want to try. Not because I feel guilty, but because the moment I saw them, I realized it's the only thing I still want to be." They stood in silence. And then a small, surprising sound. Laughter. The triplets were splashing near the water's edge, jumping over small waves. "Be careful," Unji called out instinctively. She looked back at him. His eyes never left the children. He was smiling again, but this time it was real. "I didn't know I could feel like this," he whispered. "Like I'm not a CEO, or a Kong, or anyone important. Just a man who's seeing what he could have had if he'd chosen love instead of fear." Her eyes stung, and she hated that they did. She hated that some small part of her heart still remembered the man she married. Not the one who broke her, but the one who kissed her forehead and said, "You make me feel free." She turned away, voice low. "I'm not promising anything, Min-ho. I know. They don't need more confusion. You show up, you stay. You leave again, that's it. I won't leave. Don't make promises." "I'm not," he said. "I'm building them." Her jaw clenched, but she nodded once. "Then walk with us." He looked up at her, startled, hopeful. "Just walk," she clarified. "Nothing more." He rose slowly, and beside her, just a step behind, he followed as they moved toward the children. The sea crashed softly. The sky began to open into gentle gold. And for the first time since that cruel night 3 years ago, they were walking in the same direction, not as husband and wife. The letter was from the Seoul Education Foundation, an elegant, formal request inviting her and her students to perform at a large charity event celebrating community teachers. It wasn't just a gathering. It was a high-profile gala. Guests from the city, politicians, media, benefactors, and she had been chosen to represent her region. She read the letter again, then again, and slowly, that tremble returned to her hands. Min-ho had just begun appearing in their lives again, quietly, carefully, always respectful of her space, of the boundaries she drew like chalk lines around her children's hearts. He never stayed too long, never made promises he couldn't keep. But every time he left, she saw the way Jae-hyun looked after him, eyes full of unspoken questions. She saw Suwon's silent wish for someone to chase soccer balls with him, and Hae-rin's curiosity blooming like spring buds. Unji had thought she could keep their lives simple. But now, Seoul was calling again. That night, she sat at the table, the letter spread out in front of her like a quiet challenge. Min-ho arrived just as the sun began to dip below the sea. He knocked gently, as he always did now, never assuming. She opened the door and wordlessly handed him the invitation. He read it. His face barely moved, but something changed in his eyes. "I didn't expect this," he said softly. "Neither did I," she replied. He looked up. "Are you going?" She hesitated. "It's for the children," she said. "They've been working so hard on their music. They deserve to be heard." "And you?" he asked. "Do you deserve to be seen again?" That question hit harder than it should have. She glanced down at the letter, then back at him. "I'm not afraid anymore, if that's what you're asking." "I'm not asking if you're afraid," he said gently. "I'm asking if it's time the world sees who you really became." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the living room, where the triplets were watching cartoons with their snacks. "I haven't told them yet." "You should," Min-ho said. "Let them be proud of you. Let them dress up. Let them see you shine." Her throat tightened. "They've never been to the city," she whispered. "Then take them," he said. "I'll come, if you'll allow it." She turned back to him. "As what? A guest? A father? A ghost?" He didn't flinch. "As whatever they need that night, and nothing more." The car ride to Seoul was filled with wide eyes and constant chatter. The children stared out the windows in wonder, pointing at bridges and blinking buildings. They had only seen the city in storybooks and photographs. Now it was alive, loud, too big, and exciting. Are we staying in a castle?" Jae-hyun asked, pressing his nose to the glass as the hotel came into view. "Almost," she smiled. Their suite was modest by Seoul standards, but to the children, it was magic. White beds like clouds, a bathroom bigger than their kitchen, a view of the city lights that made them gasp. Min-ho had made the arrangements, quietly, respectfully. The rooms were booked under her name. No cameras, no press. He didn't even visit. But Unji knew he was nearby. The day of the event, she dressed the children one by one. Small suits and a pale yellow dress with a ribbon for Heirin. She wore a simple dress herself. Ivory with soft sleeves, her hair half-pinned, makeup light. When she looked in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. "You look like a princess," Suwon said, grinning. "No," she whispered, kneeling to fix his collar. "I look like their mother." The venue was grand, brighter than she remembered. She held their hands tightly as they walked through the entrance, guided by event staff. They were early. The orchestra was still tuning instruments, but there was already a hum in the air. Excitement, tension, that feeling of being watched from every corner. And then, Minho arrived. He wore a simple dark gray suit, elegant but not ostentatious, and he brought no entourage. He walked toward them slowly, uncertainly. The children lit up. "Appa," Jaehyun blurted out, then covered his mouth. "Can I say that now?" Minho knelt before him, stunned. "Only if you want to." Jaehyun nodded once, then hugged him tight. Unji's breath caught. It was the first time one of them had said it. Heirin walked to her and whispered, "Can he sit next to us during the performance?" Unji looked down at her daughter, then at Minho. His eyes didn't plead. He was simply waiting. "Yes," she said. The children were ushered backstage for final preparations. Unji stood beside Minho in silence. He looked around. "The last time I was in a place like this, I watched you disappear into the crowd, and I did nothing." She stared straight ahead. "I'll never disappear again," he added quietly. "Even if you never let me back in." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Not yet. The lights dimmed. The children walked on stage, violins in hand. Their bows rose, and when they played, something broke open in the room. A melody that carried 3 years of survival, hope, and rebirth. Unji sat in the audience, her hands trembling in her lap. Minho sat beside her, silent, a tear tracing down his cheek. And all around them, people listened, to music, to memory, to a family beginning to rise from the ashes. The applause came slowly at first, almost reverent. Then it grew, louder, fuller, as if the audience collectively realized they had witnessed something they would carry with them for a long, long time. Unji stood in the wings of the stage, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She had watched every second of the performance through a blur of tears, not because the notes were perfect, but because they had done it. Her children, the same little ones who had once shared a bed with her in a rented room above a bakery, who cried for warm milk she couldn't afford, were now standing tall in front of the world, playing violins in perfect harmony, with heads held high. She felt arms brush hers. Minho standing just behind her, just far enough not to presume, just close enough to anchor her. "They were incredible," he whispered, breathless. "They're breathtaking." Unji didn't answer. Her voice wouldn't come yet. Her throat was thick with unshed emotion. And then the host returned to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice boomed, "we have a very special moment ahead. Tonight, not only have we heard an extraordinary performance from these young talents, but we also celebrate the woman behind their strength and discipline. Please welcome Ms. Kang Unji." A spotlight moved. She blinked, startled. The crowd turned. Applause rippled forward like a wave. She stood frozen for a second, her knees locked in place. Minho leaned in gently. "Go. Let them see you, as you are now." She stepped forward. The moment her foot touched the stage, her past collided with her present. She didn't just see the elegant chandeliers or polished faces. She saw the memory of the last time she stood in such a room. Trembling, humiliated, newly abandoned. And now she was here, not as someone's wife, not as a tragic story, but as a mother, a survivor, a name worth clapping for. The triplets beamed at her as she reached them. Jaehyun took her hand without hesitation. "You didn't cry, right, Amma?" he whispered. "Not too much," she replied with a smile that trembled. The host guided her forward. Someone handed her a microphone. The applause softened. She looked out at the sea of faces. And one face in particular, halfway back, near the exit, made her breath catch. Sumin. She was there. Her sleek dress, her signature red lipstick, her icy eyes. Even after 3 years, she hadn't changed. Their eyes met, and in Sumin's gaze, there was no confusion, only disbelief, a flicker of cold rage, as if she hadn't expected Eunji to rise again, to matter, to be celebrated. For one tiny second, doubt crawled up Eunji's spine, that same fear she had carried during those early months of being invisible, of being replaceable. But then Haerin wrapped her arms around her waist, and everything that mattered was in that one small embrace. She brought the microphone to her lips. 3 years ago, she began, voice soft. I walked away from this city with nothing but fear and faith. The room was still. I had no idea how I would survive. Only that I had to, because 3 lives depended on me. They didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask for the weight I carried. But they gave me purpose when I had none. A few sniffles rose from the audience. One woman in the front row wiped her tears. I am not extraordinary, Eunji said. I'm not here because I had power. I'm here because I had no choice but to keep going, even when the world made me feel small. Even when love became silence. Even when promises turned to dust. Her eyes flicked, just briefly, to Minho. He didn't look away. She continued, her voice growing steadier. I've been asked why I didn't give up. Why I didn't disappear quietly. My answer is simple. I had 3 reasons. And they're standing next to me now. The children stood proudly, smiling, unaware of the full weight of her words. But I want to say something to every woman out there who's been told she's not enough. Who's been told to keep quiet. Who's been left behind when she was most vulnerable. Her voice broke, just slightly, but she didn't stop. You are not broken. You are not disposable. You are not a mistake. The crowd rose in applause. Not just clapping now, standing, crying, moved. She bowed deeply. The children bowed too. The lights dimmed again, but the room stayed bright with the energy of something that couldn't be undone. Backstage, as they gathered their things, Suwon tugged on her sleeve. Amma, he whispered. Why were people crying? She bent down. Because sometimes, when truth is spoken out loud, it heals something inside others too. Minho approached slowly from the side, waiting again, always waiting. Eunji turned to him. She came, she said quietly, nodding toward the audience. I saw her, he replied. She looked at me like I didn't deserve to be breathing her air. Minho's jaw tightened. She's wrong. She wasn't always, she said. I didn't used to believe I belonged in those rooms. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It was worn at the corners. What's that? She asked. He opened it slowly, revealing a crumpled, faded photo. Their wedding day. I carried this with me through everything. Even when I pretended I hadn't, he said. Because even at my worst, I still couldn't throw it away. Her breath caught. I know I can't undo it, he said. But I was proud tonight. Not of them, though they're amazing, but of you. I don't know if I'll ever earn a place beside you again. But I want to try, even if it takes the rest of my life. Eunji took the photo from him, looked at it. She remembered how lost she had felt that day, how hopeful, how unaware of the storm waiting just beyond the aisle. Now she held it not with longing, but with peace. I'll keep it, she said, not because of what we were, but because it reminds me how far I've come. And then, without saying more, she turned to her children. Come on, little stars. Let's go home. As they walked out into the night, Minho followed a few steps behind. Not leading, not asking, just following. And for now, that was enough. A ripple, a single image. The morning after the gala, Eunji woke up to a strange silence. Not the usual peace of their coastal home, but the eerie stillness that comes before something cracks open. The children were still asleep, curled like kittens in the big bed they had insisted on sharing. She stepped into the kitchen, wrapped her cardigan tightly around her, and reached for her phone. What she saw made her breath catch. Her photo, taken without permission, was everywhere. On news sites, social media, a single snapshot. Her on stage with her children, head held high, Minho watching from the audience with a look that spoke volumes. The headlines were merciless. CEO Minho Kong watches as ex-wife shines with secret triplets. Who is Eunji? The woman who disappeared from high society and returned with a storm. Tycoon's children hidden for years. Love, lies, and redemption. Her hands trembled. She dropped the phone. Footsteps padded behind her. Hye-rin, sleepy-eyed, hugged her waist. "Amma, why are you shaking?" Eunji quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. "It's nothing, my love. Just tired." But her pulse wouldn't slow. Minutes later, her phone buzzed again. Minho. She hesitated. Answered. His voice was low, tense. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't tip them off." "I never said you did," she whispered. "I've been on the phone with legal. We'll shut it down, we'll issue statements, It's too late," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "They've already devoured it." "I'll protect you," he insisted. "You and the kids. I'll sue every outlet." "And what will that do?" she snapped. "Make it worse? Make us more visible?" "I raised them in silence, Minho. I kept them from your world on purpose." He went quiet. "I'm sorry," he said finally. I didn't imagine they'd be watching so closely." "You should've," she said. "You've always been watched." There was a long pause. And then, "I'll come by. We can talk in person." "No, Eunji. Not now. Not with them home. I need time." He sighed, frustrated but accepting. "Call me when you're ready." She hung up and stared at the floor for a long time. That afternoon, whispers reached the village. A journalist showed up, pretending to be a tourist. The school called, worried about the children's safety. A neighbor offered to keep an eye on their gate. And Eunji. She began to fold again. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired. So tired. That night, after putting the kids to bed, she sat alone on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, wind in her hair. The stars above didn't blink tonight. They stared. She heard footsteps. She didn't turn. "I told you not to come," she said. "I couldn't stay away," Minho answered from behind. "I needed to see you." She looked out at the sea. "They're going to dig into everything. Into the hospital records. The village. Our past. They'll find everything." "I know. And your mother?" she asked bitterly. "Is she furious? Ashamed?" "She's packing her things. Leaving the city for a while." Eunji finally turned, eyes wide. "She's running?" "No," he said. "She's surrendering. Quietly. For once." That surprised her. She studied his face, trying to read if he was lying. But there was no pride in his eyes. Only fatigue. Regret. She said, "I ruined the family name. That I brought shame by letting it get this far." "And did you?" He took a breath. "Yes, but not by standing next to you. I ruined it the day I chose their name over yours." Eunji turned her face away, blinking hard. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "The children, the silence, everything." "No," he said instantly. "I regret not fighting for you, for them. But I don't regret what came after, because it gave them you." Her chest ached. He stepped closer. "Tell me what to do, how to make it right. I'll do anything." "You can't make it right," she whispered. "There's no fixing this, only surviving it." "Then let me survive it beside you." She shook her head. "You don't get to say that now." "I know," he whispered. "But I had to say it anyway." Silence again. The sea roared somewhere far below. She finally said, "You can help with the children. Quietly. The school. Pick them up. Cook for them. Be present. But the moment they get hurt because of your name, I take them away again." "I understand." She rose slowly, stepped toward the door. "You said once that I made you feel free," she said, looking over her shoulder. He nodded. "You're still chained to everything that broke us. But now I'm free. And I won't let anyone take that from me again." and then she closed the door behind her. He stood outside, wind blowing through his hair, knowing she was right. Inside, she pressed her hand against the door, and for the first time she didn't cry, because no matter what storm was coming, she had survived worse. Sumin entered the executive floor without knocking. Her assistant trailed behind her, trying to catch up, tablet in hand. "They've already confirmed it. The photos are everywhere," he whispered, breathless. "And the investors—" "Silence," she snapped, not breaking stride. Her eyes were cold, lips pursed, face unreadable. But inside her chest, something was burning. The moment she saw Eunji on that stage with triplets, with his face on 3 children, something inside her cracked. She pushed open the glass doors of the conference room. Minho was seated alone, his phone on the table, his fingers interlaced in front of him. He didn't look surprised to see her. She closed the door behind her gently, the silence thick between them. "You let this happen," she said calmly. Minho didn't answer. "You let her rise from nothing. You let her stand in the spotlight, with your children, in front of our board members." Still no response. Sumin stepped forward. "Do you realize what that performance did to your image? To the merger proposal? The press is having a field day." "They're not my image," Minho replied, voice low. "They're my children." The words hung in the air like thunder just before a storm breaks. She blinked. "So you're claiming them now? The woman you discarded? The life you erased?" "I never stopped thinking about them," he said. She let out a bitter laugh. "That's rich. 3 years of silence, and now you remember how to be a father." He stood up, and for the first time there was no guilt in his eyes. No fear. Only clarity. "You were part of the lie, Sumin. You helped build it. You smiled when she was erased. Don't act surprised that truth came back louder than your silence." Her voice turned to ice. "Do you remember the deal our families made? The one that saved your company from ruin during the third-quarter crash? My father's backing. The strategic alliance." "Yes," he said simply. "Then you know what's at stake. I also know what I'm not willing to lose again." She stared at him, realizing something terrifying. He meant it. He wasn't bluffing. The man who had once done anything for power was now willing to burn it down for 3 small children and the woman he had thrown away. "You would give this up for them?" she asked, voice trembling for the first time. "I already did once," he said. "I won't do it again." Sumin's jaw clenched. "You think the board will accept the scandal? You think shareholders will let you play family man in public while their numbers fall? I don't care. You will." "No," he said, stepping closer. "I used to care. That's the difference. I let my mother convince me that love was weakness. I let you convince me that power would fill the void. But I wake up now and I hear my son's laugh in my hallway, and it's louder than every applause I ever chased." She blinked fast, fury rising beneath her skin. "You're throwing everything away for a fantasy, for a woman who will never take you back." "I'm not asking her to," he said. "I'm asking her to let me stay." The silence that followed was cruel. Sumin straightened her blazer, composed her expression like armor. "Then don't come crying when the press turns on you, when the board questions your stability, when your name becomes a joke." "If it does," he replied, "at least it'll be the truth." She gave him one last look. Not of love, not even betrayal. It was contempt, the kind reserved for someone you once thought you controlled. And then she turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Minho exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath for years. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling window. The city shimmered below, full of noise and glass and pretense. He picked up his phone. The screen was filled with images. Eunji on stage, the triplets holding violins, the look of fierce pride on her face. It was everywhere now. He tapped her name, hesitated, then sent one message. "If the media becomes a danger to the children, I'll take the fall. I'll resign. I'll do whatever you ask. Just say the word." No reply. Not yet. He leaned against the window and waited. Across the city, Eunji sat at her desk with a cup of tea, the message glowing on her phone screen. She stared at it for a long time, then closed her eyes. She could feel the winds shifting again. The world was watching, and somewhere inside her, part of her wondered if it would all collapse once more. But not like before. This time, if it did, she would still be standing. The children were finishing lunch when the first thunder rolled in. They ran to the window, fascinated by the gray wash falling over the coastline. "Amma, the sky is angry," Suan said. "No," Unji replied gently, drying her hands on a towel. "Sometimes the sky just needs to cry, too." She glanced at her phone again. No new messages. No missed calls. Minho had sent that text the night before, offering to take the blame, to shield them from the media, the board, the pressure. And she hadn't replied. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what it meant to let someone help you now, after years of doing everything alone. Just then, another knock came at the door. Not sharp, not urgent, but familiar. Her heart fluttered despite herself. She opened it slowly, and there he was, soaked to the bone, no umbrella, no coat. Just standing there like the storm had chased him here. "You're wet," she said. He nodded, out of breath. "I ran. I didn't want to miss you." She stepped aside wordlessly, and he entered, dripping. The children gasped when they saw him. "Appa!" Jaehyun shouted, running over. "Why are you all wet?" Haerin asked, running to grab a towel. Minho crouched, laughing softly, wiping his face. "I thought I'd raced the rain and lost." Unji watched him, soaked, smiling, humbled, and felt something deep in her stomach twist. He was trying. That was the hardest part. They all sat for a while, sipping warm barley tea. The storm outside thudded against the windows, but inside, it felt calm. Later, once the children had gone to the back room to play, she handed him a dry sweater and a towel. He changed quietly in the hallway. When he returned, she was waiting at the table. "We need to talk," she said. He nodded and sat across from her. She pulled her phone forward, opened the article. "You saw what they wrote." "I did," he said quietly. "They're calling me the ex-wife who raised your heirs in secret, like I was hiding them for leverage." "I've already contacted my legal team," he said. "We're filing formal requests to take it down. I'll do press if you want. Alone." "That's not the point, Minho," she said, voice sharp now. "This isn't just about press." He looked up at her, confused. She continued, her voice lowering. "You came back and you were different, and I let you in. Not all the way, but I started to trust what I saw." He nodded cautiously. "But now the world knows, and the attention is on us, on them. And if you disappear again—" "I won't," he cut in. "You say that now," she said. "But you've said things before. You've looked me in the eyes and made promises you didn't keep." He swallowed hard. "I know." She leaned forward. "So tell me the truth, Minho. Not what you want to be. Not what you think I want to hear. Tell me, are you ready for this? For everything that comes with being their father, their shield, their place of safety." His face tightened, not with pride but pain. "I wake up every day terrified," he admitted. "Not of them, but of not being enough for them, of failing again, of hurting them the way I hurt you." Her throat tightened, but she didn't interrupt. "I'm not proud of who I was," he said. "But I'm not that man anymore, and I know words aren't enough. That's why I've been showing up quietly, why I didn't push when you said no, why I've been building the trust. Not just with you, with them." His voice cracked slightly. "When Suwon asked me yesterday if I knew how to fix his toy robot, and I said yes, I didn't. I stayed up until 3 in the morning learning how. So the next day I could say I did." She blinked. He looked at her with eyes full of storm. "I will mess up, Unji. I'll forget things, I'll say something wrong, I'll make mistakes. But I will be there, every time, even if it's awkward, even if you never forgive me." Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the patter of rain. She leaned back slowly. Her voice was quiet. "You know Su Min is going to retaliate, right?" "Yes." She'll try to turn your mother against you. The board. The press. She'll dig into everything. She might even go after my family, or what's left of it. I'm already preparing for that. She's dangerous, Minho. I know. Then why are you doing this? His answer came without hesitation. Because I'd rather lose everything again than lose them again. Her eyes shimmered. The children called from the other room. Amma, Appa, come look. Suwon built a tower taller than me. Minho smiled instinctively. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she stood. Let's go. He blinked. Go where? To see the tower, she said softly. It'll probably fall in 2 minutes. He rose slowly, unsure of what this moment meant. A gesture of peace? A step forward? As they walked toward the back room, she paused beside him. Just don't promise me forever, Minho, she said. Promise me you'll stay even when things get ugly. I swear. She looked at him one last time quietly, then opened the door. Inside, 3 children were waiting, wide-eyed, proud, with a teetering stack of blocks reaching toward the ceiling. And for the first time since the storm began, they stepped inside the room together. 3 days after the rainstorm, just as the morning sun was painting soft gold across the windows, Eunji opened the door to find a thick envelope resting quietly on the front step. There was no name, no sender, just the unmistakable elegance of something meant to wound politely. She brought it inside, her hands already cold. The children were brushing their teeth, singing a silly song in unison. She didn't call them. She didn't let them see. She slid a finger beneath the flap and pulled out the contents. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Photographs. Dozens of them. Minho outside her house, at the school, on the beach with the children. Then, a letter, typed, Ms. Kong, you've had your moment. Now return to the shadows where you belong. Do not confuse grace with forgiveness. If you do not step back quietly, we will make sure your story becomes one of scandal, not sympathy. There are things the world doesn't know about you yet. Her fingers tightened around the letter, wrinkling the paper. The kettle screamed behind her. She didn't move. Later that afternoon, Minho arrived just as the children were down for their naps. She opened the door with the envelope already in her hand. Her eyes were steel. He saw it and froze. What is that? You tell me, she said, tossing it onto the table between them. He picked up the photos and paled as he flipped through them. Who gave you these? Sumin, she said without hesitation. Who else? She's watching us, documenting you, preparing to destroy everything. He sat down slowly, shoulders heavy. I knew she'd react, he muttered. But this is war. She threatened me, Minho. She threatened to rewrite my story, to make me look like I was using the children. Using you. His jaw tightened. She's trying to scare you into leaving again. Well, it's working, she said, voice cracking. Because I can't go through this again. I can't be dragged through the mud while trying to protect 3 little lives. He stood and walked to her, eyes desperate. Then let me protect you. And how are you going to do that? She snapped. File another lawsuit? Make another statement? You don't understand, Minho. This isn't a headline for me. This is my life. Our children's lives. He reached for her hands, but she pulled away. I thought maybe we could rebuild something stable, she whispered. Not as a couple, just as a family. Quiet, safe. But she's going to destroy that. I won't let her. You can't stop her. He hesitated. Then, with a breath that sounded like defeat, he said, Yes, I can. She looked at him, heart pounding. What are you talking about? I'll step down, he said. She blinked. What? I'll resign from the board. Cut ties with the company. With her. With all of it. You'd throw away your entire empire just to... It's not an empire, he said, his voice sharp now. It's a prison. One I kept myself in for too long. One I let her design. If walking away means keeping you and the kids safe, then I walk. No hesitation. She was silent for a long moment, staring at him like she didn't recognize him. Do you mean that? I do. But that company is your legacy. Your name. Your life. He looked at her then, and his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. You and the children. You're the legacy I want now. Emotion hit her like a wave. Not because he said it perfectly, but because he meant it. Because, for the first time, he wasn't reaching for power. He was reaching for peace. She wiped her face, furious at the tears escaping. Don't say things like that if you're not going to follow through. I already started the paperwork. Her breath caught. What? He nodded. 2 nights ago, after we built the tower, I knew it was only a matter of time before she retaliated. I just didn't think it would be this fast. She sank into a chair, stunned. He knelt in front of her, not like a man begging, but like one offering the truth, finally, with nothing left to hide. I want to be free, not just from the boardroom, from the guilt, from the shadows. If I have to start over, build something new, I want to do it near you, near them. She looked down at him. Even if it's just as a neighbor? He smiled. I'd build the fence myself. She laughed. Barely. A cracked, soft thing that lived somewhere between disbelief and grief. And then, from the hallway, came the sound of little feet. Heirin peeked around the corner. Amma? She asked sleepily. Is Appa staying for dinner? Unji turned her head. She looked at Minho. And for the first time in a long, long time, she whispered, yes. The little girl grinned and disappeared again. Outside, the sky began to clear. The storm wasn't over, not yet. But in the shelter of that small home, something was shifting. Cameras swarmed the corporate building. Shareholders panicked. The press camped outside his penthouse. But he wasn't there. He was in a village by the sea, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Jaehyun, helping him build a model airplane from a box missing half its pieces. Unji watched from the doorway, heart full of knots. And just as she'd feared, the calm couldn't last. On a Tuesday afternoon, the school called. She was folding laundry when the principal's voice came through the phone, low and hesitant. Ms. Kong, I hate to be the bearer of this, but a group of reporters attempted to follow your children after school today. They were stopped by a teacher, but it frightened the other students. Her knees nearly gave out. I'll be there right away, she said. By the time she arrived, Minho was already there, crouched beside Suwon and Heirin in the back office, trying to make them laugh with a stuffed bear he'd borrowed from the nurse's station. They were okay. Shaken, but okay. Jaehyun, however, sat quietly with his arms wrapped around his knees, his mouth set in a hard line. Why are they taking pictures of us? He asked when she knelt beside him. They want to make stories, Unji said softly. But they don't know you. They don't know us. Are they bad people? He asked. She hesitated. They're lost people, Minho answered behind her, voice steady. They don't understand how precious something private can be. Unji looked at him, the weight of it all thick in her chest. That night, back home, the children clung to them more tightly than usual. Heirin wanted to sleep between them. Suwon kept the lights on. Jaehyun stayed awake long after the others had fallen asleep, watching the door. After they were finally down, Minho stepped outside into the yard, hands buried in his coat pockets, the chill biting at his skin. She followed a moment later, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. We can't do this forever, she said quietly. They deserve peace, stability. I know, he said. I've contacted a private firm. We'll have full-time security around the school. Around here, too. That's not a life, Minho. That's a fortress. I'll build a fortress if I have to. She shook her head. I don't want them to grow up thinking the world is chasing them. Then we change the story, he said, turning to her. We take control of the narrative. You do. She frowned. What are you saying? You go public. On your own terms. One interview. One story. You tell the truth. Not the tabloid's version. Not the twisted elite's gossip. Yours. Her blood ran cold. You want me to expose everything? No, he said. I want you to own it. Because right now they're painting you.